Hi, I'm Rhys from Woody Wood Spirit. Welcome to the International Association of Wood Carvers. Today I'm going to be talking about my approach to spoon carving.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the International Association of Woodcarvers. Today is Saturday, May the 25th, right at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we appreciate you taking time out of your Saturday to come in and join us. This will be our last meeting that we have before we start our summer series. Starting in June, July, and August, we're just going to have one meeting a month. That'll allow myself and Dave a little extra time to maybe take a vacation and do a few things. We know it's a busy time during the summer, so our next meeting will be on June the 22nd. Again, it's going to be with a guy named Rick who goes by Scarecrow Woodcrafts over on Instagram. He travels throughout Europe playing music, but he's also a wood carver and teaches carving over there. So I look forward to having him on the 22nd. We'll be working hard to try to get presenters lined up for July and August. Starting in September, we'll go back to a weekly meeting. One of those weekly meetings is when we broadcast live from Carving the Rockies out in Colorado Springs. That's going to be September 14th. The show out there is September 14th and 15th. Again, it's in Colorado Springs, Colorado. If you haven't made plans to come out there, try to make plans to come out. You can go out on the CCA website, check out all of the events. I'll be advertising for that as well on social media, so watch for those advertisements. They're going to have all kinds of different things. The Ugly Cowboy competition. We're going to have a whittling competition. Of course, the regular show where you can put items in the show. There's a dinner on Saturday night that's a lot of fun. Just all kinds of things going on, and it's really a good time. So if you thought about making plans to come out there and you haven't made plans yet, go ahead and try to get signed up. Come on out. We're also doing a school of caricature carving out there as well, September the 16th through the 18th. If you're interested in taking classes out there, you can do it after the show, those 3 days after the show. You'll need to go out on the CCA website and get signed up. So make sure you go out and check that out. Want to remind you about a workshop that's going to be starting on June 1st. Dave Stetson's got a wood carving, a 5-piece Cowboy and Friends class that he's signing people up through this weekend. And the reason he's just doing it through this weekend is because he's got to do the cutout for you and get it in the mail, so you'll get it in time to participate in the class. So if you're interested in that, reach out, talk to Dave, get signed up, get your payment into him. It should be a fun class. Again, I think it's 2 weekends in a row, Saturday and Sunday, and looks like a great time. So if you ever want to take a class and you just can't get to a location where they're teaching, really this is the best option to learn live. You can see every cut that he makes during the class, and it's really a good way to learn. So make sure you check that out. And again, if you're interested, reach out to Dave Stetson and get signed up. Janet Cordell is also going to be teaching a class in August, on August the 5th. It's carving a horse jumping a fence. Same thing with Janet. If you're interested in that, reach out to Janet, get signed up. She'll tell you what you need. You may end up having to get a rough out, or she may have a pattern that you can cut out of a block, but you need to go ahead and get signed up with her. Again, if you're not familiar with Janet's work, she's fantastic. She's been on our meeting before in the past and really does some great work. So if you're interested in taking a class from her, reach out to her and get signed up. Before we get started with Rhys, and today we've got Rhys of Woody Wood Spirit from the United Kingdom that's going to be coming on with us. He's going to be talking us through his process of carving spoons, talking a little bit about how he sources wood and kind of what got him into carving. He's going to do a little demonstration stuff for us. But before we get started with that, Dave Stetson's got an important words of wisdom today that he's going to share with us. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dave.
Sorry, guys, I didn't have myself unmuted. You're not going to get a word of wisdom from an old master today. This is going to be something that's just kind of coming from my chest. Memorial Day brings to thought in my mind about what Memorial Day is and what it was and what it used to be as opposed to what it is now. I don't think it's really changed, except that in the public's perception. So I just want to throw a word out there to you. It's called freedom. Freedom is not free. If it's something you enjoy, it's been paid for. It's been paid for by the highest cost that someone can pay. It's been paid for with someone's life, and not just one someone. Thousands of someones have paid for your freedom with their life. And that's what this weekend is about. It's about honoring those people and respecting their service. And it just doesn't seem to be that way anymore. When I was younger, there was a parade, and we would join. I was in the Cub Scouts initially, and felt really proud that we were able to join in the parade as a scout group. We had the Cub Scouts and the Boy Scouts and the Explorers, and we would all march. And in that parade was led by the military, the National Guard or the Reserve of the small town that we lived in. And as scouts, we got to carry flags, and that became a real honor. But you'd march along and kids with their bicycles all decked out in crepe paper and streamers would ride along the sides of the parade as it's going through town. But the parade would go from the common in the center of town out to a cemetery. And we'd march into the cemetery, and it would get real quiet, and all you'd hear was the beat of a drum. And then the parade would come to a stop, and there'd be a prayer, and then they'd play taps. And then you'd hear another bugler off in the distance playing taps, a refrain for what was played. And it was hundreds of people, but it was so quiet, you could hear a pin drop. And then after that, there would be a volley of gunfire. The military honor guard would fire their weapons. And boy, those rifle shots, you just feel it in your chest. They go right through you. And that's how I grew up learning about Memorial Day and the sacrifice that people had given. And then the parade would resume. We'd march out of the cemetery, and we'd go about a mile, and we'd stop at another cemetery. And this happened 2 or 3 times during the course of the parade, something that they still do today, but not much. You don't hear much about it. And I've been listening and reading the papers and watching. And when the term Memorial Day comes up, we hear about the appliance sales and mattress sales, okay? We hear about how crowded the airports are going to be and how busy the highways are going to be, because everybody's getting ready to start on vacation. Our numbers are low today because there's a lot of people out there enjoying the long weekend. Just remember that there was a price paid for that.
Thank you, Dave. Yeah, as you're out and about on Monday, instead of celebrating, stop and think about those that have gone on before us and sacrificed their life for our freedom. So thank you for that, Dave. So having said all of that, again, today we've got Rhys coming to us from the UK. He's known by Woody Wood Spirit on Instagram. This reminds me once again that this is an international meeting. We have people from all over the world that either watches the meetings live, comes on and presents, or they actually watch the videos after the fact. We try to share wood carving throughout the world. That was the initial goal in the beginning of all this, back when COVID started. And that's still the goal today. We want to share wood carving. We want to see it grow. We want to have as many people that will participate in it to get involved. And we hope that our videos are a little part of that. So, Rhys, just want to say thank you for taking time out from your family. Rhys is a school teacher. He took some time out to come and meet with us on Thursday so that we can get ready for this. And just want to say thank you for coming on again. He's been on with us before. Thanks for coming on, your willingness to share, and you're willing to do whatever it takes to share what you do. Is much appreciated. So Rhys, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, my friend.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Here we are. Here we are. You can hear me, can't you?
You're good. Yes.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks for that. Yeah, and thanks, Dave, because obviously things are different here in the UK, and we don't have this weekend that you have. And actually, from my perspective, not having that, I found that really moving. So yeah, thank you. And thanks to Blake and Dave as well for having me back again. I think it was around about this time last year that I came on and felt like a total fraud, and still do. I don't consider myself to be, an expert in anything. I think I represent. I think I represent the normal, the common man. I just love wood and I love carving, and I do a bit of everything. I think for those of you who didn't see last year's, I've always done things with wood, and I had a back operation. It's got to be about 10 years ago now, and it changed a lot of what I was able to do. Thankfully, I'm pretty much back up to full speed now over time. But I found that I could still do small carvings, and I sort of got into that a lot more. And over time now, I carve a bit of everything. I threw a few things in front of me that I'll just show you. I mean, I do sort of little characters. This is just nice because the wood is so nice. Little fox there, just little bits and pieces. I did start from an amazing guy who carves over here, and he uses strong magnets, little strong magnets, which means that you can have these bits that pop off and go back on again, but they're movable, and pretty much carve anything that sort of comes to my mind. That was I think I said this last year. I ended up accidentally getting some basswood, some lime that we call it, which I very rarely get. I very rarely carve, and ended up doing a replica of my own finger. So has no use. I was asked, is it a middle finger? No, it's not. It's my index finger. And sort of got into carving all these various little bits and pieces. And I found that, hang on, I'm going to throw these on the floor out of the way. There we go. And I found that, one of the things that I come back to often is spoons. Not sure, if I'm honest, how I started with spoon carving. I know I've got one that my parents have kept. I must have been not very old when I first had a go at it. It's basically a stick with a dimple, but it worked, and it went up. It was hung up in the living room for a while, and I don't know, gathered dust and things. But as much as I love carving all these other bits and pieces, I find that it takes a lot more of my creative efforts, a lot more concentration. Like I said, I very rarely get lime wood, basswood. Friends of mine are tree surgeons, arborists, and got me some the other day, and that's kind of a face that I'm working on at the moment. But like I say, I do find it takes a lot more of my brain power, and I carve for my own sort of it's a need. I have to carve. I can't sort of not carve, but it's also very good for my mental health. School is very, very busy. I'm deputy head teacher, so deputy principal. It's tough. Schools are getting harder. The children are getting harder. They've got a lot more need, and we bring an awful lot home. And I find that, once I'm home and the work stops, once you start playing with sharp knives and sharp tools, you have to be 100% invested, 100% concentrating on what you do. So it's that switch off. Over the last sort of 5 years, I have been lucky enough to get involved with a few different projects to do with well-being and to do with the benefits of things, not just carving, but things like carving on sort of on our mental health, on our well-being. So the spoon side of it is my go-to. I don't say it's easy, but speaking to Blake and Dave on Thursday, and I said it's almost like it's that kind of muscle memory thing. I can I can carve whilst watching the TV or whatever it may be. And it doesn't take quite so much concentration, the actual process. The design, yes, it probably does. So I was just going to talk you through where I am, what I do, how I get to that point, because I'm not. It's a funny one. As an educator, I'm probably the worst student. I don't often look at other people's things. I don't often learn from other people. I'm one of those that I know best and I can do it better and I can do it my way. So I haven't made huge progress over time, but I'm kind of getting there slowly. So my kind of approach is that the wood that I get generally comes from, I'm lucky enough to live in the country, so it could be fallen wood, it could be people, friends, neighbours, family who know that I carve, and they will say, well, I've had some work done on trees, or this is snapped off, do you want it? And yes, I do. And I try to I don't have a standard wood. I carve what comes to me. So I know a lot of people say, "Oh, what do you carve? What's your favorite?" I try and carve whatever comes to me, and but the thing that I always do is I carve it green. It's fresh wood. It's unseasoned, so it's still very wet, very sappy. It comes with its own challenges. You know, they can warp, and I mean, I'll be honest, I absolutely love the fact that this stuff warps. I've put one specifically on the side here to show you. I mean, that, oh, I put it down, I put it up there. That gives you an idea of exactly how much the wood can warp as it dries. That, when I carved it, was straight. I've carved lilac in the past, which you know, I was warned by somebody, don't carve lilac, it'll move all over the place. And it was amazing. I mean, the handle of it, I couldn't find it for this evening, but the handle had actually, as it dried, it twisted almost through 180 degrees. It was absolutely amazing to see. But for me, I love the fact that the wood moves and it does its own thing. It makes it part of the interest. So with regard to the wood, I carve pretty much anything that comes to me, like I say. There are a few exceptions, and generally we'll get a sort of slap on the wrist for carving things like yew wood, which is has a level of poisonous nature to it. And also, and I put one out here because it's just such a beautiful wood. This is laburnum. I'm guessing you guys have laburnum out there. And laburnum has this beautiful dark chocolatey heartwood, very hard, and this lovely sort of creamy sapwood. So you get this amazing contrast. Now, laburnum, I mean, I social media for you, isn't it? You kind of put things out there, and then you get the keyboard warriors who tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing. But actually, you know, I've never had a problem with laburnum. I think you probably have to eat the spoon to get to get any sort of ill effect from it. But some of these woods you can get affected by the sap. There's another beautiful wood that we carve. I think you've got it there. We call it sumac. It's a Rhys. We also call it tree of heaven, and that it's got a very sticky sap, and that can cause sort of contact issues with skin for some people. Touch wood, touch wood. I don't have a problem with any of these things, but like I say, I am very conscious that things like this that is carved out of wood that I know is potentially risky, that stays with me. That's sort of, in fact, you can see that one's not even used. That's more of a sort of just a little bit of a showpiece, just because the wood is so beautiful. But seriously, I will carve anything, and I've put an absolute array of spoons in front of me before we get into it, just because you can see the kind of styles and the various ones that I carve. So you've seen that one. So this one is, and I'll be honest, my eyes, as I'm getting older, are getting worse. So I've got my glasses on. I normally write, I initial things, and I normally write on the back what the wood is, and I haven't, and I can't remember what that is. But I like to try and carve fruit woods. Fruit woods are great. So we've got, you know, blackthorn and mulberry, cherry, plum, applewood. pear wood, any of those kinds of woods are great to carve. And I'll just lay some out just so you can see the variation in the grain. I think this one is blackthorn. There's cherry. I've got where is it? Yeah, I've got things. Oh, there we are. This is oak. And something that's very interesting that I've done with I made sort of 3 of these similar sort of looking spoons. And you can ebonize them. So I put wire wool in with vinegar, and it creates this sort of solution. And when you rub it on, the tannin in the oak will turn it a jet black. I mean, absolutely jet black. And it's stunning to look at, but I'm not sure people are that excited off eating off spoons that look like that. But yeah, this one is magnolia. So this is I was fortunate enough somebody had a branch actually snap off in bad weather, and that was a bit of magnolia I had. I think that was a little piece of oak again. And I mean, loads. There are. Oh, but honestly, I'll pull some more out as we go, as we sort of as we look at them, because the wood I always feel makes it. The design is obviously very important. But I am, as cliched as it sounds, I absolutely go with the wood. I let the wood do the talking, and I'll show you what I mean, because I've bought some wood in to talk you through how I actually go through the process. Here we are. I'll just show you these as well, because this is there's another bit of blackthorn, and you can see the difference in the heartwood and the sapwood. That I think was damson, which is a type of plum wood. And this that's another fruit wood there. The interesting thing that with any spoons, I'm going to shuffle these out of the way, is obviously once you've got into spoon carving, there's lots of embellishments and designs and things you can do. I know a lot of people do chip carving. I don't know if you can, is it going to focus there? Chip carving on handles. I'll be honest, I've not really got into it. I've dabbled a little bit with it, but I don't tend to. Some people do coal rosing, so they'll score into it, and this was actually coffee. So I scored the design in, rubbed coffee in it, and obviously it stains it. So that's a nice little spoon there. But the designs of the spoons, it is absolutely the world's your oyster sort of thing. So I mean, I've gone quite creative with some. I've gone very traditional with some. I mean, I've got some absolute monsters like this sort of ladle here. And I've got some little tiny ones. It's a long handle with a tiny little bowl on it there. And it is, I like to carve for a purpose, but like I say, I need to carve. So I put on the side our most used spoons, because obviously we my wife says we need a spoon for this purpose. That's my job then. So I'm showing you this one because this was an early spoon that I made. It's just poor in my eyes in so many different ways, yet it ended up being our most used spoon because it kind of got slung on the side and became our coffee spoon. The stirrer and the one for a bit of honey, and as much as it was a reject, and you can see by the staining of the coffee that it just became a favorite. So that one, although that one has now been usurped, is taken a back seat by this one. But again, you can see the sort of the staining of the coffee on that, and the honey goes in there and into the coffee and away to go. This I don't put it on all of my spoons. But what I found is that I try not to put them through the dishwasher. I try to sort of just wash them under the tap. And I found that putting a little pointed end on it, when it's stood up, the water runs down and it will drip off there. And because obviously, with the best will in the world, a lot of the wood is porous and it will sort of soak up. And if you saw the end of this one, obviously that's the end that's been used. That staining is from where it's been stood up to drain on the draining board. So putting that little point on it helps to sort of reduce the amount of contact area with the water as it it drips and drains. This one, again, done with a purpose. There's a slight crank to it. This is one that we use for cooking a lot. You can see it's been left on the stove for a little bit too long in certain places. This one, again, another one that we use. This is an interesting spoon because there was an exhibition up country back, I think it was last year or the year before, and they wanted an example of a well-used spoon, and this is one that we use all of the time. And you can see by the patina on it, the patina, that it's been through the dishwasher countless times. Everyone will tell you, don't put them through the dishwasher. But I think our attitude is, well, if it splits, then I can make new ones. This one, again, is one that we use. You can just tell by the look of it. And it's a little pour-in ladle. Now, I'm not sure if you can see on this one, but it is starting to get some shapes, some splits through it. And that is just from the wet and the heating and the drying and the cooling of the dishwasher, but still functions. And then probably my three most used, that's my cereal spoon in cherry, and that one is used every single day without fail. That one with a lovely little crank is a kind of I tend to use it a lot for things like soups and things like that. And then this one again is it's only small. It's only a little dessert spoon. But if you look at the size of the bowls on them, it raises yet another interesting part of spoon carving is, you know, like I say, I look at other spoon carvers online. My goodness, there are some absolutely outstanding, you know, and I think, goodness, how can they ever make such beautiful objects? And they all vary massively. Now, I like spoons where you can actually fit it into your mouth and you can sort of, you know, they're all in. Other people like I'm not sure if I've got one here actually, the bigger bold ones where you kind of, that kind of nibbling off the edge sort of thing. But so, you know, the beauty of the spoon carving is that's one there, is that you make it for your own preference. And once you've got one that you like, once you've got a shape that works for you, obviously you can repeat them and you can sort of make from that. I did put this on the side as well because this was almost, it struck me when oh, hang on a minute. What do you make? What do you do to make each spoon safe to use in cooking? What type of covering? Well, I'll cover that now then, because actually it's crucial. I these days only use walnut oil. I don't know if you can see that there. So the walnut oil is this is, I don't know if anybody in the UK or anybody who knows Waitrose, it's a very upper class supermarket over here, but it was needs must at the time. And the beauty of walnut oil is that it will soak into the wood, but it polymerizes, so it will go hard and it will give a waterproof, tough coating to it. So what I do, and actually I was going to do this later, but as we're talking about it now, I'll show you. Once I've carved the spoon, and I sand nothing, everything is knife finish, and I burnish it. So that means I rub it over really hard to flatten all of the grains. I used to use, I'm just looking in my carving box here. Let's see if I can find it. There it is. I used to use an old coat button. There it is. So that's what I used to use as my burnisher. So once I'd finished, I would rub it all over and it would flatten the grains. And then I read that somebody had said about using antler. And this was bought by a friend for his dog as a chew, and never actually got as far as the dog because I saw it and I went, oh, I think I'd like that. So I filed over the edge and smoothed it. So I now burnish, and obviously that's for smaller bits. I now burnish with that. So literally just rub and flatten all of the grains and oil it. Now, there's another debate is, do you oil before you burnish or after you burnish? I'll be honest, I couldn't give you a reason for it, but I always burnish before I oil. But I've absolutely read that some people oil, then they burnish. So I think it's those usual things, it's personal preference. Sorry, going back to what I was saying, when I was talking to when I was talking to Dave and Blake about, you know, where did this come from? How I actually started was I made one of these first. It's just a spatula for cooking, and this was simply just split the wood out, and then suddenly I realized, because this has got to be, well, I mean, this has got to be over 10 years, probably over 10 years old now, and it's used a lot, and you can see how sort of durable they are. But it was from that I started thinking, well, if I can do that, I can make other useful utensils, and that's kind of how we got into the spoons, I think, anyway. The other beauty of the spoons is, like I say, the creativity side of it. You can go any way you want. So, I mean, I carved this a while ago, and people say, oh, it's a stick with a dimple. Well, actually, it really is. There's a birch stick with a little scoop on the end. So there's a little spoon there. I've made, in fact, I carved a feather and I bored at the end of it, and I put a pen insert, so it was sort of a writing quill. But obviously that lends itself as well to spoons. So I've kind of incorporated the two different designs to create a sort of a feather spoon there. And in school this year, in fact, we were doing some work around bones. Now this is sumac wood again, and this is absolutely stunning. You can see the grain on it. And when we were looking at the bones, I actually carved finger bones, the phalanges for finger bones. So I made a bit of a spoon with, I think, I'm absolutely not a doctor, but pretty close to being anatomically correct finger bones. So you can see, I mean, once it's I guess when you hit things like this, it's the crossover between the spoon carving and my other carving. The other thing that works really well is once you start getting into, you know, basically scooping out a bowl of something, it lends itself to making little coffee scoops. This, I think, I'm pretty sure this was mulberry wood. And I've just got a pile here. So I showed you the laburnum scoop, and then varying size, almost like a nest of scoops here, varying size scoops you can see here, up to what's known as a cookser, which is a drinking vessel. So that's like a sort of a gigantic, if you wanted, a gigantic spoon, but for coffee. And that works really nicely. This, I will show you this. This was a terrible, terrible disaster of a fail. This is catalpa wood, Indian bean tree. And I always fancied carving myself a mug. And felt very, very pleased with myself when I made this. Until I put my first drink in it, and catalpa, I should have really thought about it, but catalpa is porous, and it ended up being the most disturbing thing. It was like the mug was sweating. It was just oozing this coffee. It was gross. It was disgusting. So this is now, yeah, a reminder not to use catalpa for things like this, but also I love it. I mean, I was very pleased with myself. So there's a good mistake to learn from. But again, going back to sort of once you start scooping bits out, I've also used just little offcuts and bits of wood that I wouldn't have used for anything else to make. This is again a little bit of sumac, and just made a tiny little sort of bowl. And like we've got some of these upstairs, and you know, earrings can go in them and bits and pieces. This was a piece of alder that actually a tree had fallen down. We were on a walk, and it was just a sort of wedge that was cut out and thrown on the side, and this came back with us. And again, it's sort of it's got a kind of bath look about it, but it's just nice and interesting as a sort of just as an interesting sort of little dish or a bowl. So like I say, I mean, once you kind of get into the whole scooping out of wood, it becomes another endless sort of opportunity of things to carve. I'm not going to go into detail on this one because this is a total thing in itself, but I also carve love spoons. Now this is friends of my in-laws are getting married. I think it's next month. So, and love spoons are a very traditional Welsh thing. Obviously, coming from Wales, it's sort of it is an interest of mine. I'll be honest, they take a long time. They're hard work. I do enjoy the process, but sometimes I get frustrated by it. So so I don't do too many of them. But again, each part of the love spoon has a meaning, and you know, obviously horseshoe for good luck, and the spiral for lives becoming entwined and together. And the people who get married live at Woodcock Cottage. So, but like I say, again, it's a variation on the theme where you have the crossover between the actual carving and the creative process. So I'm going to very quickly, I don't know if can you put it back onto the main camera for me, because I'll just show the big log. So what I do, I'll just show you the process, because when I started this, I learned an awful lot the hard way. So I've bought in from outside. This is a cherry log. Hang on. Ugh. So that's a cherry log that I've split today. I did cut it to length with a chainsaw, but apart from that, I only use traditional hand tools. So I've got, I'll just very quickly give you an idea. I absolutely adore these. This is a silky pruning saw. It's a Japanese saw. They are super sharp, but brilliant saw. So that's what I use as my hand saw. And then everything else is split. I'm making a mess here now. That's my maul or a beetle or a mallet, whatever you want to call it. And I put, that's a froe, that's a small froe. I've got a bigger one. So that goes on top of the wood, bop, and it will split the wood. And you can pretty much steer a split where you want it to go. And then from there, I tend to axe everything out. Now, this is a Gransford's axe. I was very fortunate to get one of these. I used to just use whatever I had at the time, but and you can see the grind on it. It's a side axe, so it's flat down there, and the bevel is on this side. So you can actually you can control it, and with a beard you can choke it up quite close. So you know you can swing it to get the big cuts. You can choke it up to do the sort of finer work. And I try to axe out my spoon blanks as close to where I want them before I bring them in. And I've kind of got the process all mapped out so you can see it. So, like I said, with that big chunk of cherry, once it splits, you end up with there, and you can see the difference between the heartwood and the sapwood. And this is where that whole sort of, you know, I let the wood do the talking comes in, because if I pick up the other half, that's what I ended up with. Now, if you look by there, you can see there's a slight knot, and where my little finger is there, you can see another knot. So I've actually cut that, and I'm going to put that one on the side. I try and use as much as I can, but this is a far nicer as a fan of Monty Python. I'm taking that as a compliment. So that is, you can see with the heartwood and the sapwood join. So I would then use that to guide what I would do next. So over here are all my various stages. So I use that froe, and I end up splitting out. I don't know, can you put me back onto this one now? So I end up, hello. There we go. This is what you end up with. And you can see the color variation. So there's our heartwood, the pink, there's our sapwood, and the line down the middle. Now, I like to have that sort of combination of the both, but you've got the choice. You can either split it that way, or it can be used that way. So you can have a top and a bottom like that one. So if I was going to carve that, I'll just pull out a hook knife and show you. There's my sapwood, there's my heartwood. So as I carve down into that, you end up going and getting that sort of transition from the one wood into the other wood, and the color will change, and you'll start to see the sort of variation between the two, the heartwood and the sapwood. So as I went down into that, that's what we would end up with down through there, and the sort of change of color. Just going to pop that one on the side. So my process is, once I've decided on, am I going to keep it like that as a blank, or am I going to keep it that way on with the divide down the middle? And I would end up then just with a ruler. Now, some people use templates. I don't. Some people draw them on. I every single time start just with the piece of wood. That obviously is running on a slight curve, but I do tend to use a ruler just to give me a sort of start and an end line. So at least I've got something to work with. So I've got my line in there, and I do transfer it onto the end. Because what that does, once you start sort of working with the wood, you're cutting this line away. So it's nice to keep that. And then I would draw it on, and I would freehand draw it. Occasionally, I try and make them symmetrical. And then I'll use my little ruler and sort of, you know, draw extra lines on. And then I can sort of work the design onto that. And the other thing that you've really got to consider is the crank to make it more comfortable to use. So, you know, if I show you my favorite spoon, you can see the crank is that transition there. And this is not where the crank happens. The crank happens down in the bowl by there. So what I've done is, and I'll be honest, this is for somebody working with green wood, plastic bags are your best friend. These are bread bags, old bread bags. So I keep them in here to keep them moist and keep them in the fridge, and they dry out far more slowly. So that's what we're trying to end up with, that sort of crank shape. So that's where we've gone from. We've kind of gone from that to this. And just out of interest, I was going to try and sort of recreate a little feather spoon just because it's a bit more interesting. And what I've done with my pruning saw is I've made a series of cuts that I will now axe to. So with my axe, I want to get this crank. So I would end up cutting that away there. And I would end up shaping this like this and bringing it up that way. So all this shaded in would be cut. Obviously the spoon would be this kind of shape and then running up to here. So you can see by axing it all out and chopping it with the axe, you're sort of removing all of the bits that you don't want, and you're left with that sort of spoon shape in there. And like I say, I tend to work with the wood, and if it has a knot, if it has a split, if it has the grain going in a particular direction, I don't force it. I let it run where it wants, and I adapt my sort of cutting according to that. So once I've cut that out, that would be chopped off. Whoopsie. That would be chopped off. I'd axe these corners off. Now, what I do is I axe this off first from the handle side, and then this afterwards. And the reason for that is that this acts as a stopper. So if my axe goes too far, it's stopped by that. If you cut this away first and your axe goes into it, it can catch the edge of the bowl. And even though you might not see it at the time, what you would end up with is, as it dries, a little split opening. And that is what happened with this one. This was that. And what had happened, I just caught the edge there, and as it had opened up, so this was never the plan. This was saving a beautiful piece of wood from the sort of bin. So I ended up making it into like a little pasta scooper. So I would carve those out, and like I say, I'd hack those out with the axe, and you end up with, like I say, I didn't draw the design onto this one, but you end up with this sort of shape here with the crank built in. So then I would, you know, draw on my design, And what I end up with then is a piece that should be a bit like that. And hopefully you can see now that sort of process of going from that to that. And I deliberately carved that as quite an extreme crank. You can see how it matches up there, but it still gives the idea of that sort of cranked shape, because obviously a spoon can't just be straight unless it's perhaps a cooking spoon. You need to have that level of crank on it so it's comfortable and it fits and it's easy to sort of pop in your mouth to eat. So that's my basic shape. And like I say, most of this, as much as I possibly could, was axed out. I would say probably the only tools that you would need beyond your usual whittling tools are these hook knives. So this is an open curve, and this is by Wood Tools, a guy called Robin Wood, who has really promoted sort of traditional crafts and has actually set up a sort of a knife making business up in Sheffield, and they produce really affordable and amazing quality axes, spoon knives. So I've got that one there, and I've also got another one of theirs. If I can find it, there it is. And you can see the difference in the curves. So one is a far tighter curve. Now, as I've been doing this for a long time, I've managed to sort of find and sort of acquire lots of spoon knives over time, and I always try and make my own little covers. This is a Mora. So as with the, which to be honest, I still love the Mora sort of whittling knives. This is a Mora spoon knife, hook knife. So it's quite a sharp curve on that. So it's quite nice to have a variation depending on what your sort of your aim is. And I've got another, I think this is another Mora, which is a double edge, which is useful for sort of doing the opposite side of the bowl. And again, you can see the variation in the curves. Now, like I say, I worked with this one for years and years and years before I sort of bought and sort of was given other ones. But they're my main go-to ones. This is an interesting and a lovely little tool. This is a Hans Carlsen, and I've had this now for quite a few years, and it's basically just a little gouge, but a palm gouge. So when you get to the point where you're sort of doing the opposite side, you know, you can see obviously that's my main way I'd be going, following the grain. And then it's nice to sort of be able to use it to sort of pull out the other side of things. And this was a gift. It's a company, actually. They work, they're Ukrainian made. They sold from the USA. And this is, it's a lovely tool. I don't use it quite as much as these, but it's great. It's funny, isn't it? Every tool you have has its own little use. So it certainly gets used when the time is right. But again, anything with a curved blade, you sort of is all good. And I've got various straight knives. I don't use my flex cut very often for spoons. I find that a lot of the wood that I'm using, because it's fruit wood and things, it can damage the blades. So I tend to use the slightly harder ones, and I've got some other knives that I've had by local sort of craftspeople who've made them. So back to that. I won't worry about the handle, because you know, putting in feather stripes and the rib of the feather will come at a different time. So my main aim now is to carve that bowl out to be to a position that I want it. And I can still change the depth if I want. You know, I can take more material away from that underside if needs be. And I tend to start with the open curve and just try and follow the grain and leave a little edge to it. There we go. And sort of take away as much material as I can. Now, if I'm carving a harder wood, I do tend to go for Have I got it here? Oh, there it is. I've got a Hans Carl's, no, Svant Jarv. This one is another, and it's a thicker blade, and it just seems to be better at removing the material. It's a bit of a tougher blade, if you know what I mean. And I don't mean that in that these ones notch or anything. It just seems to have got a little bit more power behind it somehow. So I'll carve that out as best I can, sort of shaping it. There we go. And I mean, one of the things I always say is that I'm not a speedy worker. I'm not a quick carver. It's slow and steady, I think, wins the race for me. But you can see straight away, just by pulling out that material, I'm starting to get that sort of that bowl shape. And what I'm trying to do is just leave a little bit of a rim, a little bit of an edge to it. So I can, there we go. In fact, sometimes you guys are not going to be able to see this, but if I held that up to the light, sometimes you can even use the light to gauge the thickness. I always use my finger and my thumb as my main gauge. It's, you just get a feel for it, and you can kind of work out what thickness you want that to be. So, and again, it's such a contrast to carving sort of basswood, limewood, in that you really have to work with the grain, you have to follow the grain, you have to work out the best way to cut. And you can see I'm constantly moving it round. So I'm following that line of the grain so there's no tear outs, and just working my way around. Yeah. And I can feel now you can see on the rim is quite wide there. So I would just quietly just keep working my way down onto that. And when I sharpen, I mean, I did say last year, I'm not good at sharpening. I tend to keep going until I really need it. But when I do sharpen, I either use the flex cut rub there, or a metal polish, and I use it on either a piece of leather, or I've got piece of MDF. This side I've got the metal polish on, this side I've got the flex cut, and I just hone it quietly, and then every so often, whenever it needs it, I'll give it a sort of a bit more of a harsh sharpen, but I tend to sort of strop and hone it, well, not often enough, but as I feel it needs it. So that's you can see the bowl starting to sort of take shape there now. Now, if this was for me, I would be sort of popping it in my mouth and going, yeah, does that feel okay? I need a bit more here, or it needs to be a bit narrower, or whatever it is. But you know, if it's one that's going elsewhere, obviously that's not what I'm going to be doing. So there we go. So you can see now how that, and the key is to try and get to a point where we're not going to have any little ridges, any lines, any sharp edges. There we go. Now, my general approach to this is that I would keep fussing with it and keep tweaking it and doing a bit more and doing a bit more, and I would end up probably irritating myself with it. But once I get to a sort of a pretty standard sized edge, you can see it's not quite right. It's a bit wider there than it is by there. Then I would start to sort of shape the edges and start sort of finishing it off. And you can see, I mean, that's, I don't know if you can see on there, this one's got a flat ridge around the edge here. It's just catching the light. And then the outer edge comes up. Now, you don't want a sharp rim to it. So once I've carved the majority of this, I will then put it to dry for a day, and I've got some finer finishing knives. This was again made by somebody who was just sort of a local craftsman, but it's got a lovely little sweep to the blade, and it's great for doing these, because this is where the tricky bits can be, and you can see that it just needs a little bit of cleaning up there. You can see where the grain has sort of has picked up. So what I would normally do is get it mostly finished, and then I would return to this in a sort of day or two, or once it's sort of dried out enough, and then I would do my finishing cuts, and I would just take a very fine slither from around the rim like that. And once I'm around the rim like that, you can sort of you can run your finger over it, you can feel it. And obviously, once all those finishing cuts are done, then I get my burnisher and I would rub it all over, smooth all those fibers down, and hopefully then end up with you know, a very smooth, very nice, soft finish. Because obviously, you know, if you're going to be using these and eating off them, you want this to be as sort of as finished and as smooth and as, you know, silky as possible. I mean, the other, obviously, the design part of that, I would sketch on with my pencil. Then the general shape of it. I don't tend to draw all of the feather shape onto it because it takes forever. Now, some people I know would carve it with a fine knife. I do have a Robert Sorby, which is a UK made palm chisel V-gouge here. And I would just quietly just sort of follow that shape and start to. Now, what I've discovered over the years is that I tend to do the pattern. You can't quite see, it's not showing it, but any thoughts about keel on the back of the bowl? So what do you mean by keel?
Where the handle meets the spoon,
Okay, so
kind of a ridge that flows into the
yeah,
bowl.
yeah. That, I mean, that can vary depending on, in fact, I haven't got one here, but you can see the difference between sort of where I am with this one and where that one is. And that one really does go to a very narrow point. And what you want is you need to have a certain depth here, because obviously this is where the strength is, especially if you're narrow up here. For some of them, I mean, the transition is just very much a handle, but obviously for some of the finer eating ones, that transition is, you need the strength without it being looking too over the top. So this is, like I say, this is one of my spoons. So I've left the little ridge there, left the little ridge at the bottom there. So if you look at the width of it, that's actually, you know, that's quite deep there. But if you look at it that way, there's really not a huge amount of material in this. So the strength is in the depth of it. And that can vary. I've lost the other one now. There it is. This one, you can see, is far, far more delicate, far narrower. But again, like I say, this one's been in use daily for years. So that one's a sort of, that's a nice model to stick to. And again, it is this one with more time, I would end up making this narrower. And I tend to draw straight on the wood. Like I say, I don't use templates. Everything just is different every single time. So I would probably draw on that, make it far narrower this way, but ensure that I kept the depth that way, so it doesn't lose any of its strength. And again, it's a case of you know, just working down that way and back up this way. So you're working with the grain every single time. There we go. And as long as it doesn't go too thin and you go into that sort of point, then yeah. So you can kind of get the general idea, but the transition between your handle and your spoon can take all manner of different shapes. And you'll see, you know, if you kind of look it up, there are some absolutely outstanding sort of people who do the most amazing things. That was just something slightly different. You can see there, you can change the look of them and various bits. And this is a guy called Lee John Phillips. He's I think he lives in Wales. He's certainly relatively local to us here, and he makes these. This was kind of following his sort of pattern. These lovely little thumb spoons, very small little traveling spoons, and you can see the crank on that one there. they're lovely. I mean, that I made that one, and I haven't parted with it because I really like that one. So yeah, so you can see with this how I would just quietly just keep returning to thinning it, making it a bit more fine, a bit narrower. There we go. So my finishing cuts, like I say, they tend to happen once the wood is and once the spoon is more seasoned. And I definitely thin the back of the bowl here a bit, make it a bit finer there. Same here. And most of well, all of what I do is just from sort of keeping an eye on what looks good, what doesn't look good. I think that comes with the risk as well, that when you find a design that you like and you are constantly sort of experimenting, that I've got a bag of ones that generally end up as once the fire's started, they're the first bits of kindling to go on. So yeah, they're not all successes. They're all it's the usual experiment and learn. So once I would put those feathery little stripes in there, what I tend to do then, and like this is a good example again, is that can you see how I've scooped out the middle of that one, and by going close to the edge with the top design, if I make it very thin, it picks out the actual how often do you use dry wood for your spoons? Never. In fact, the only time I ever use dry wood is for love spoons, because I can't afford for them to move and twist and like I say, I mean, I love the way that the wood moves. And if anybody saw this one on Instagram, this was carved. Like I say, none of mine are absolutely perfectly symmetrical, but this was pretty much. And as this shrunk and dried, when I returned to it to finish it after it was dried, it took a huge amount of work to make it look sort of okay. It just warped and moved that much. But again, I love the asymmetric look of these things. I like the way it moves. So yeah, letting it dry and just letting it do its own thing. And I think that's probably why I don't end up with many splits, because I just work with the grain of the wood, and when I split it with my froe and I let it split in its own direction, the stresses that are in the wood, I'm not trying to control them, I'm working with them. So, I mean, I was very fortunate with this because this was just a beautiful bit of cherry that I've managed to source. But I'm not going to force this to do what I want it to do. I'm going to follow what it wants to do. And like I say, it is cliched and it is a bit sort of a bit twee, but I really do let the wood go where it wants to go, and it'll warp where it wants to go, and the splits will go where it wants to go when I sort of cut it out with the axe, and then hopefully we end up with something that's functional and beautiful. But
is that the reason you rough? Is that the reason you rough with an axe as opposed to a bandsaw?
Yeah. Especially with this, and to be honest, I do the same with my my small carvings. I just let it go where it goes. So, like I said, from the point of view of showing you what can happen, these bits aren't the best. Oh, where are we? Are we under there still? Yeah, these aren't the best because these are lovely straight grained, and it's relatively straightforward to use. But quite often, because I only use wood that I'm given, I have to make do with whatever I get. So by splitting it out, you allow the split to go where the wood wants to go, and then you work with it. So like I say, I've carved heaps of spoons, and I think one in particular, which was a wood that is really tricky anyway, which is renowned for splitting, I gave word, there's only one that sticks in my mind that split. But yeah, by working with the wood, by splitting it, by using axes and the traditional hand tools, you can absolutely feel what that wood wants to do and where it wants to go. Now, I can see there were questions, and I've done my usual and gone on one Monty Python style. And I haven't. Is there any? I don't even know how to pull up the questions. Oh, there they are.
There's one there that they're asking how you dry it after you carved it. So do you lay them out, or what do you usually do to dry them?
I just put them. We've got a wood burning stove. with a big oak mantelpiece above it. And I tend to put them up on top of there. This time of year, obviously we're going into the summer. I just leave them because I'm so busy with work. And that's why I keep all my wet wood in the fridge in a bag. I might start a spoon today. I might not return to it for 3-4 days, maybe even a week. So I put it up on the mantelpiece. If I feel like it hasn't dried, I'll just carve something different. And then, I might return to it. It might be the next day. It could be weeks later. In fact, I've got 4 on top of the mantelpiece in there now that all need finishing. And I go through phases. Sometimes I just want to carve, and sometimes I think, well, I got to finish them now, so I'll return to them. And when I do finish, I do tend to strop my knives, so I try to make them as sharp as I can get them. So like I said, I don't sand anything. Everything is knife finished, so you need a sharp knife. You need to be able to get a lovely finish on it. So yeah.
Out of all the hook knives that you use, for a beginner, which one would you recommend somebody getting?
Honestly, these are when Wood Tools, when Robin Wood started making these. I mean, I can't say I was one of the first, but certainly when he started making these were one of the earlier ones, I think, because I've had them so long. But these are, and especially for the price, they're absolutely outstanding. So this is Wood Tools, made in Sheffield, so they're UK made, but and I mean there are countless around, but out of the ones that I've got, these are my go-to every single time. And actually, if I had to survive with just a few, it would be these two and my where is it? The big the one that I said was quite hefty. Ah, there it is, my Svant Jarv one, because it's very good at removing material quickly. You can take big scoops, big chunks with that. So probably those 3, but these are just brilliant. They're absolutely the curve of them seems to be just right. They're lovely. They're brilliant to sharp. They take amazing edge. So yeah, I can't fault those. They're brilliant. That's where I would start.
Do you sell any of your work?
I do. When I can, I get I try and do a Christmas sale in the local town. And it's actually lovely because I've done it now for quite a few years, and I get people coming back going, "Oh, I'm still using your coffee scoop," or I use your spoon for yogurt every single day." And then the other end of the scale, which totally and utterly blows my mind, is that people go, "Oh, I've got 5 of your spoons now." I go, "Great, how are you getting on with them?" "They're lovely. They're up on the shelf." I'm going, "What? They've got like a display shelf and they've never used them." So insane. I don't know. But no, I do when I can. But like I say, when I do have a sale, I have a range of these and those, and so it's But the ones that are quite popular are these little pocket spoons, and people will use them if they go traveling or if they are out and about a lot. And because they're so small, some people actually hang them around their neck on like a little lanyard, or they can pop them in their pocket. And one person even said that she used it as a grounding object that she kept in her pocket, and she would just rub, and she just liked the. Oh, sorry, there we are. So these are the little pocket spoons. So, but she said she would just keep it in her pocket because it was small enough, and she would just, rub it, and it just. She described it as a grounding object just to sort of keep her connected. So yeah, it's just. I mean, what I love about spoon carving more than absolutely anything is that the variation you can go from, like I say, something like that to something like that, to something like that. It is just when I look through my sort of box of spoons, you just think, well, I don't quite know what to show because they're all a variation. I mean, that even coffee scoops, it's just a spoon but slightly different, and then the things that you can do, like I say, with the decorations, making it more sort of artistic, or I mean, I do like I do like a feather, but and then if you look at people who are doing sort of absolutely fantastic, and if you do get a chance, I mean, the guy who carves these Lee John Phillips, he is just outstanding, and what he's doing, he's putting doing sort of chip carving in them, and then he's sort of inlaying gold and things. Honestly, they are just in a totally different league. They're super amazing. So yeah, it's worth it's a rabbit hole. I mean, if you think character carving and sort of carving like that is a rabbit hole, this is another world. So yeah, you get lost for hours, but it's great fun, and it's so easy and so accessible. And I don't have to source any particular wood. I use what's there. And actually, I'll just show you this one. I don't know if you saw this. I kind of got into a bit of metal detecting relatively recently and found this. And it's just such a gorgeous shape. I don't know what age it would be. There's no... have you attended the Big Spoon Show? No, I haven't. No. Spoonfest has recently been on. But what I ended up doing was trying to recreate that. So I can't hold it quite, but this is a really, really nice shape to eat on. So whoever made that back however long ago it was really understood what a spoon is. No, Spoonfest in this country, well, in England we have Spoonfest. I've never made it. It's such a big event. It sounds brilliant. It sounds great, but I'm one of those. I'm one of those typical sort of introvert. I love doing things like this. I love sharing what I do, but I wouldn't go out of my way to talk to big groups of people unless it was online. So yeah, as much as the thought of Spoonfest appeals to me, I probably won't make it.
All right. Any other questions from anybody in the group? As you can see there in the comments, everybody has been fascinated with your presentation. Definitely interesting stuff. Makes me want to go carve a spoon. So I'm going to go start looking for some fruit wood and go to work. So Rhys, thank you. Thanks for coming on again. Again, thanks for going through the whole process and telling us everything that you do to be able to make a spoon. Those are quite nice, and it's cool to make something that you can actually use every day and have for a long time. So really neat stuff. I just want to say thank you again for coming on with us, and you're welcome back anytime. So don't be surprised.
Thank you, and thanks for everyone. Like I say, I mean, I feel like a fraud because I kind of do what I do, but I'm not up there with you guys and everyone else. But no, it's always a pleasure, and it's brilliant. It's always good to see you guys too. So thank you.
Thanks, brother. Just to remind you all, we'll be back on June the 22nd. Rick from Scarecrow Woodcrafts will be on. If you're interested in signing up for Dave Stetson's class, you need to reach out to him this weekend. Get signed up, and this summer, get out and go to some wood carving shows, and also make plans to come to Colorado in September. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to see you out there. This has been the International Association of Wood Carvers, where wood carvers are helping wood carvers. We'll see you all on June the 22nd. Thanks for coming on and joining us today. Thank you.
Piece of blank.
Well, I mean, that's just part of the whole thing is not being able to find pencils and you're in education, so you guys don't really use those.
We're the worst.
You guys use computers now. That's all. It's all computer driven, right?
Well, mostly, yeah.
We'll say we'll write down whatever you need to write down, and we'll take as many takes as we need to. Anything that's funny, humorous, or just I feel like putting at the end of it, I just put at the end of it. So
okay, cool.
People
love the bloopers at the end.
Well, in that case, I'll try and get it right first time.
Oh, try your hardest. Don't worry, Blake and I will not be here distracting you at all. Wink, wink.
Right.
We'll make sure you do well, man. Let's see.
We've been lucky though, Dave. Last few times, most people get it on the first try. So.
Yeah, and last week, man, I didn't have any. You didn't leave me with any bloopers to do. I just had to edit and go. It wasn't even fun. I mean, come on.
What's this now? Building up the pressure on me, is it?
No, never. No. You wonder why I
Yeah.
started recording so early. No.
We'll wait to let Dave Stetson in until after you get it done, because he will distract
Yeah, the whole time.
Right, that should do it, I think.
All right. We'll say it'll be whenever you want to go. Got you spotlighted. I've got you set. So I won't even count you down. I'll just let you go when you want to go. And we'll do it as many times as you need to.
That's all right, isn't it? That's everything's out the way, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, looks good. See, he don't need 2 takes.
Oh, I needed to record that.
No, you're already recording.
Oh,
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
am.
Come on.
Sure.
Was that all right or not?
That was
That's
good,
good.
man.
Perfect.